So we are studying Apostle James. I told you briefly about the connection between Apostle James and my family. That my great-grandfather, his name is Santiago. Santiago is the Spanish version of James. So he went ahead and studied and then became an ordained clergy, established several churches, and the first church he established, he named it as Saint James Church. Okay, so the same name related. He was buried there. He was, I think, 1800s, and he was a great poet. And he wrote several Tamil lyrics and composed several songs which are being sung all over the world. Previously, how Christian people worship in India, they have to sing songs, isn't it? So music is part of our worship, important part of our worship. And songs, especially when you sing songs with the lyrics, and it touches our hearts. So what they did earlier is all the hymns that we sing here, they were translated into Tamil, but with the same tune. For example, O come all ye faithful, joyful. The song goes like that. The same thing in Tamil. Bhattare marum, asai amalodum, niparum, niparum, nipalane. See? Same tune.
The melody is the same.
The melody, the tune is the same, but the verses will be in Tamil. That's how they were singing. But during the time of my great-grandfather and previously also, people learned the local music, the Carnatic local music, Indian music, and composed songs. Originally, those music were used, those tunes or music were used only to compose songs for the Hindu idols. They used the same music to compose songs for Christian music, and then added a lot of indigenous instruments and made it as complete Indian or Tamil. So people were happy to sing, in their own music. So it was very appealing for several people. That's why those songs, even after 100 years, it still lingers in our ears and hearts, being sung all over the world. Okay, that's the connection between James and my family. And if possible, God willing, I'll show you some of the pictures of St. James Church in southern part of India, and the burial site of my great-grandfather and all those things. I'll show you later, maybe next time. But today, as I promised you, I know that you all brought your Bibles, but for your convenience, what I did is I requested my brother to add everything in the PowerPoint so that we can read from here in one version so that we could all follow it. So the occasions of James' presence with Jesus, because we don't pay attention sometimes individually. What did James? Because we pay attention to only the major apostles like John, Peter, or
One.
say it again.
One. John.
Yes. So we pay attention, or Paul the apostle, we pay only attention to them. There are a lot of other apostles, and we won't call them as minor apostles, okay? Because in their own way, they were the best. In their own way, they are good. And they did whatever possible from their place that they could do. For example, we can never compare with one minister to other minister. And suddenly our congregation should not, who's the famous Billy Graham? Suddenly 5 people from our church cannot come and tell me, you know, you don't preach like Billy Graham. That's not possible. You cannot compare with one minister with another minister. Whatever that we are given, Bible says and Jesus says, my grace is sufficient for you. That we need to remember. But whatever that we have is the best. We can never covet the neighbors' things. Okay. So I have the occasions where we could see James's involvement. So one by one we will read. The first one is raising of Jairus' daughter. Mark 5:37. Okay. That is verse 37. Can anyone read?
Okay. And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James.
Okay. John is the brother, John the apostle is the brother of James that I mentioned. And here we see the proof, evidence for that. Peter and James and John, the brother of James. So Peter, James, John, only they were allowed, because I told you the reasons why everybody cannot go. They don't live in palaces, you know, small houses like that. Next one. On the transfiguration happened in the Mount Tabor. It's a small mountain where Jesus took them and he was transfigured, which is one of the major incidents that we commemorate during Epiphany. We are in the season of Epiphany right now. So this is one of the major events of Epiphany, that God reveals himself to the human beings, the God's revelation to human beings. Unless God reveals himself, we won't be able to fathom, we won't be able to comprehend God. So here, let's read it.
And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves.
You know, by Jesus taking a few of them, we cannot call Jesus as a partial guy. Why he takes only the same people again and again? We cannot question that. But he must be having some reasons behind it. The level of maturity, the level of understanding, the level of accepting is differing from each other. Okay. Accordingly, Jesus deals with us and with everyone. For some people, he says, just go and believe. You know, your servant is healed. He doesn't even go there. He doesn't touch. He does nothing but says, just go. That's one way of healing, okay? The other way, what he does, he makes some muddy, he makes a mess of the ice and then tells them to go and wash it in the Siloam. So that's another way, because he deals with each and everyone according to their level of faith. Yeah. But remember, we don't have to have a big faith. Bible clearly says, even if you have the faith to the level of the mustard seed, that is good enough. And if you have the level of mustard seed or a little beyond that, yeah, I would say, you know, my faith is like a gooseberry
Yeah.
or a clementine, like that, you know. So you don't have to measure it, is what I'm saying. even if it is the smallest thing, that is good enough. So here, we don't know the exact reasons why he takes only these three, some important occasions, but that's what happened. Also, if you take a look, James and John were disciples of St. John the Baptist. And they had some understanding about evangelism, about Christ, the Lamb of God. They had good understanding. And Peter was the foremost. And Jesus has already made up his mind to make him as the leader. Okay? So the leader has to be trained more than the followers. You get my point? So he decided Peter is going to have the keys for heaven. He's going to be the first pope. He said, on this I'm going to build my church. Peter is rock. Peter means rock. Pedro is rock. So that's one of the reasons he is training some core group people. And John is going to write the gospel. So he is going to be an eyewitness for everything. Whatever he sees, he is going to write. So Jesus must have known this. So that's why he chooses certain people. Okay. So we cannot say, oh, he's partial and he only takes few of them. All the other people who are not close to him. It's not like that. We should never think like that. Okay? So you can read.
Okay, I think I read that. So.
Okay, you read it. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So that's why he took Peter, James, and John. Three of them went the transfiguration. And what happened in the Mount Tabor on the day of the transfiguration? We all know. that. I'm not going into it. Next. Agony in Gethsemane. Okay.
And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled.
Again, Peter is there. I think Peter is the must guy. Okay. And then sons of Zebedee, whose son of Zebedee is two people, James and John. These are sons of the Zebedee. He began to be sorrowful and troubled. Okay? Agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's what happened. Okay? Next, please.
But Jesus said to him, do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you. As a Samaritan village rejects Jesus. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him, who went and entered a village of the Samaritans to make preparations for him. But the people did not receive him, because his face was set toward Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them? But he turned and rebuked them, and they went on to another village.
This is a very interesting incident that we could see the character of James here. We already saw that Jesus called him as son of thunder, and this is the only example that we get from Bible. There could be several places that he would have behaved like that, but for us, this is the only incident as an evidence comes to us. I don't think Jesus would have called him son of thunder for a single incident. There could be several incidents would have happened. Everything was not written down. Bible says that everything cannot be written down. Everything was not written down here. So when we read this, Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down? In this, we could see the character, like a lot of things. What comes to your mind when you read this particular one? Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them? What exactly that comes to your mind when you read it? So feel free, please.
John and James, they should have the ability to bring the fire down. Because he says, do you want us to tell fire to come down?
Okay.
I don't know if they were given that ability to do that.
That's a good way of looking at it.
I didn't hear what said.
Correct.
Okay, he says, do you want us to tell fire to come down? So I'm thinking they may have, James and John, they may have the ability to come down fire from above. I'm not sure, I'm just thinking this way.
Anyone else?
Well, it's the frustration maybe on their part because this village refused to, accept them.
Right.
And, yeah.
Frustration, yeah, definitely, because how can somebody deny our teacher, our rabbi, not to come, not to enter? How dare they could do it? That's the frustration and anger that we could see. Anything else? Anybody else? That's fine. I mean, some you have here. Don't want to say that. You have here. You feel something here. You want to say something, but you don't want to say it aloud. Okay, feel free. We are all a small group of people. I want this to be a nice discussion so that the learning will be more.
Pastor, would you say they were humiliated too?
They were humiliated.
By
Yeah, you could
by
say
them
that.
to do that?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
They were humiliated for Christ's.
Yeah.
For his.
As the followers of, they felt bad about it. Okay.
Pastor, does that mean that they used this fire before?
No.
Why would you say something like that if you didn't know whether you could do it or not?
In the Old Testament times, some of the prophets did that,
Oh, okay.
So they relate to that incident. Anybody else? Okay, so as my brother said, Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven? First of all, they thought their teacher is the powerful God, and he could do anything that he wants. And also, he could empower the disciples to do everything that they could. Okay, that's why. Also, they believe in heaven. They believe in heaven here. Come down from heaven and consume them. And they also believe the ability. They are not only their own ability, but the ability of Christ who could do that. And with the help or the strength draws from Christ, they could also do the same thing. Okay? And also, fire to come down from heaven and consume them. They were, they followed Christ and they accepted him completely. And when something happens to our master, then everybody becomes violent, A popular teacher was assaulted by the village people back home in India. All the students got wild. They just beat them and, chased them away. Small boys, but they joined together because they don't want their master to get hurt. And here, it's not physically, but mentally, if somebody says don't come in, and they really got hurt. So that's why they were angry, and especially James was very angry. Fire from heaven and consumed them. But thank God they asked Christ before doing anything. And we also in our lives, we have to, before doing anything, we have to ask Christ, permission from Christ, whether it is God's will or not. Sometimes it is very difficult to understand God's will. Very difficult. Yes.
They probably wanted to. They were in the mood.
Yeah.
And my favorite line from the Old Testament is, "The heart is deceitful above all things." You gotta watch what you really want. That's
Right.
the thing to watch out.
Correct. So you cannot act in anger. is again, it may go wrong completely. So, but Jesus says, and Jesus didn't even, he did not smile. Oh, yeah, you know, he would have understood about their love towards him, but he never said, oh, no, man, no. He did not say like that. He rebuked them. He turned and rebuked. He immediately, no, you cannot do that. What nonsense you are talking about? That's how he reacted, you know. He didn't say, oh, good, our people are good followers. You know what? Do it. Never like that, you know. He rebuked them. Say rebuke means you can never do that, even in the future. That's what we understand from Christ's. And they went on to the another village. If one village doesn't accept, go to another one. Don't curse it. That's all. Don't bring fire on them. Okay.
Pastor, I'm not sure that first line, because his face was set towards Jerusalem. I don't know if anybody else also feels that way, but was it because, you know, his main mission, Christ's main mission was Jerusalem? When it says the people did not receive him because his face was set towards Jerusalem.
Because Samaritans don't accept Jerusalem faith. Samaritans have their own faith.
Right.
Okay. They know that Jesus is always belongs to Jerusalem church. That's his church. That's where he went at 12 years old. He went and taught. So they know that they belong to a different sect.
Okay.
They're not Jewish people. Okay, they don't have the same faith. So that's why they don't want another faith to enter their village. That's the reason. Okay, next please. Otherwise, they don't have anything against him. Just a religious difference, faith difference. Okay, the next one. During the Passover preparations, James was there. Other occasions, and the Last Supper, definitely all the 12 disciples were there. And the Last Supper. So that's why I put Last Supper. James was also there during the Last Supper. Okay? Next.
Well, St. James is the patron saint of Spain, and according to legend, his remains are held in Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, Spain.
Okay, so this is the major country for which he is the patron saint.
Pastor, what is that according to legend stuff? Who's saying this?
The legend means the hearsay, the past story, the stories which are being passed generation to generations. Some of them cannot be proved in writing. So that's why they say legend. So exactly who put it or who made James as a patron saint, there is no history. That's why they say legend. Pilgrimage. I think we read this about in 2010 and 2011. Look at this, 2004 Jubilee year, 180,000 pilgrims went. And a lot of people, they go by walk. Next. Santiago, St. James, the mood slayer. When you go to some of these Spanish churches, you will see this. When I went to Mexico, I saw this in the church, which is called again Santiago. I have the pictures. I'll show it next time. There are a lot of churches named after him, Santiago, because in the Spanish world, because he went to Spain, the Spain went and invaded a lot of countries. The complete from Spain to Mexico, from Puerto Rico, they invaded all of them, and captured, and they ruled. That's why Spanish is the main language there. Whoever, Mexico people, they speak Spanish means, well, Spaniard came and captured, and that became their language, because the original knowledge was not Spanish for Mexico. At the same time, all over the South American countries, every single country was ruled by Spain because of Columbus. Columbus went on the way to India, went and captured places, because those places where all the Red Indians were living, they went and captured them or killed them and occupied, like that. Even Spain came and occupied some of our US states. Next.
Okay,
This is the, yeah, read please.
Okay, the insignia of the Order of Santiago is a bright red cross simulating a sword and has the shape of a sphere on the handle and on the arms. The knights wore the stamp of the cross on their banners and on their white capes.
Do you see that in the picture? Spear. The next one. The spear shape on one side, and the other side is sword, like that, these were the banners for knights, followed the name of St. James. Yes.
When I was in France, we visited cemeteries, and I can't remember which is which now, but in a couple of them, they'd have statues of a big cross, and it's in the shape of a sword. It's actually a sword.
Okay.
And when Eisenhower went to France, he wrote Crusade in
Yeah.
Europe.
Correct. Yeah.
So we've got this association between Christianity and war.
Yeah. So any religion, for that matter, the war is part of them, because you have to defend your country. You have to defend your religion. So that's why there were wars, and they took over Jerusalem. So you have to go and chase them away and capture it back. So that's why the wars happen in between, and all the knights were there. And under the Holy Roman Empire and under the direction of Pope, they formed groups of people who will go fight. So, okay, that's why the cross itself became a sword and spear, one side spear, one side sword. Okay, next.
Okay, the cross on the banner had 3 insignias on it, one in the middle and one on each end of the arms. The 3 fleurs-de-lis represent spotless honor, an honor of having defeated an enemy without spilling blood, which makes reference to the moral characteristics of the Apostle St. James.
What does that mean? Whose blood? How do you do that?
I need to do. I don't remember exactly about this point, but the mood slayer, without killing him, he slayed him. A kind of a story is there. So that I will tell you next time. Let me see. Maybe in the next slides. Because none of the disciples were warriors. One of them did take the sword and cut the ear off of one of the Roman soldiers, but Jesus immediately rebuked him. From that time onwards, none of them took cross. Sword. None of them. They did not lead an army, or never like that. Because Jesus never wanted them to be leaders for the militia, but leaders for people. Okay, so next.
The sword represents the knightly character of the apostle and refers his martyrdom. since he was decapitated by sword. It can also symbolize, in a certain sense, taking the sword in the name of Christ.
Yes. Okay, next.
It is said that the form of the insignia originated during the Crusade period, when the knights took small crosses with the bottom sharpened to be able to nail them into the ground and carry out their daily devotions.
Huh.
Okay, so could be the other reason also because of the sharp nature. So they did not use this instead of a knife. They have a bonnet, kind of a knife here, no? They have a sword and then the knife here. Sometimes when they are near, they use the knife, or even in the gun,